My man! Welcome to the show. How are you? Really excited as a parent and as a person of color to have our guest today. Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey guys, what's up? It's Irfan, and this is the SunnySide Up podcast. We're going out to about 30,000 people throughout not just North America, but last time I checked, we've got Central America and parts of Europe, so I'm blown away. So I needed to step it up with my game in terms of the type of guests that I have. And I think that's also part of the reason that we've gotten the type of traction that we have. So I'm really pleased to introduce you to Irshaad Ahmed, CEO and co-founder of ToeGrace. Irshaad, welcome.
Irfan, how you doing, man?
It's a pleasure to have you. I'm doing good because you're on the other side of my screen. Listen, I think the best place to start. So guys, for those of you who are not familiar with Irshaad or may have not have Googled him, he is a force of nature. Let me explain why. So I reached out to him a couple of weeks ago and I said, hey, look, I'd love to have you on our podcast. And he's just like, well, let's do lunch. And I was like, I don't really like driving out to the suburbs, but yeah, sure, let's do it. And so these conversations typically are pretty ho-hum, pretty par for the course. We just talk about what they're doing in their business. I sit down with Irshaad and he's just like literally, what do you call it? Fire hose, fire hydrant of just lots of information. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack, and there's business stuff, there's venture capital stuff, there's how to navigate a market stuff. There's all kinds of things. So I think this would be a really important podcast for those of you who are either just starting a business, thinking about raising capital, or anywhere in between. Irshaad, what I'd like to start off with, if it's okay, is how did you come up with the idea and a little bit about your background? And let's start there, and then we can peel back the layers of the proverbial onion, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, first things first, appreciate, you having me on the pod. I have listened to a few episodes. It's pretty awesome. So I appreciate that. My background, so I've got a little bit of a kind of a lot of pivots and unique twists and turns. I started out in the government contracting world, okay, for automotive, lubricants, janitorial supplies, and we were selling actual physical commodities like pallets of oil, pallets of toilet paper, pallets of diesel exhaust fluid to local and state municipalities, to jails and correctional centers, to school districts. So it was a unique model that we were able to sort of acquire contracts that were publicly available, source product domestically, internationally, and basically be that arbitrage between drop shipping. And then we also, built some warehousing and kind of was able to bring in product overseas into our warehouse and, leverage the China play, right? Which a lot of companies have done really well at. So we won a ton of contracts through reverse auctions. Okay. And not a lot of people know what a reverse auction is. So it's basically exactly what it sounds like. It's instead of prices going up, goes down. And instead of having multiple bidders and one seller, you have multiple sellers and one bidder. Okay. So let's say the city of Chicago needs 1 million cases of toilet paper in 2024. So what they'll do is they'll issue what's called an RFP or an RFQ, request for price or request for quote. And then they'll go to the public and say, hey, if you sell this product, this specific commodity, this specific part number, right, then put in your price and the lowest price wins. Okay, that's the conventional contract RFP process. What some government agencies started doing, I think right after 2010, 2011, is they basically said, hey, we're going to look at who the main sellers are of this product. We're going to control and, through quality control the supply, and we're going to invite them for a 30-minute online reverse auction. Okay, so you're basically in a virtual room, kind of like a Zoom room, right, with 4 of your competitors that you've been going head to head with for the past decade probably, and you see their names on the screen, and the city of Chicago comes on the screen and says, all right, we need 1 million cases of this product, and you have 10 minutes to bid the price down. So I put in a price, my competitor A puts in a price, I see that price, and then I lower my price, and then competitor B sees my price that I lowered and lowers their price, and it's literally a race to zero on price, and lowest price wins at the end of the day. So we won a couple of contracts through reverse auctions blew my mind. Okay. Because everybody has their margin floor, right? There's a certain price that they're not willing to sell below. And because we were very heavily aggressive, right, we were able to acquire a lot of contracts. And then I thought to myself, well, reverse auctions exist B2B in this format, but I haven't really experienced anything like this at the B2C level, right? So I kind of looked at what industries I be able to parlay this infrastructure to and see if it would actually gain any type of momentum or adoption. So I settled on local home and localized services. So kind of like automotive repair and handyman services, things like that. So this was 2018, 2019. I brought on a co-founder, someone that I've known for a really long time. And we started building a local reverse auction marketplace, right? So a use case was we built an app. Let's say you need new brakes on your car. You would basically go to the app, type in or click on the auto mechanic category, very similar to Amazon, right? You would click on categories or just type in, and then you put in your car make and model, and then nearby auto repair shops would bid on your job. So let's say I need new brakes on my car. Then I would put in 2006 BMW X3. I need new brakes on the front and back. So then Joe's Auto Repair would put in a price. Tim's Auto Center would put in a price, right? Same thing that's happening, and they know it's legitimate because they see their competitors bidding in real time, right? And the lowest price wins. So we did that across all these localized services. We had about 10,000 requests, I want to say, in like the first 3 to 4 months. It was going gangbusters here in Chicago, across landscaping, across home maintenance, across automotive repair, across towing, across car wash and car detailing, right? Because this is kind of combining the best of both worlds of Groupon and eBay, right, into one. And that's what we were doing. So demand side loved it, supply side hated it. Okay. We kept on churning out our supply every 60 days, right? They would get really excited to get onboarded. And then a month or 2 months later, they're like, screw this, I'm out. Every customer that comes through, there's no margin in that business. I guess the mindset is they're not willing to pay as that as a customer acquisition cost, essentially to hope that they come back later on, right? So that's what we started realizing. We said, you know what, let's kind of take the reverse auction out, because it seems like we're also fitting a really unique need where you have a localized marketplace, right? Because Groupon is just discount oriented, right? But this is kind of where it's like a combination of lead generation, marketplace. And then we looked at which categories we had the most amount of demand in, and it was towing, right? Now, me, I've been a AAA member. I think I'm like third generation. My card says like members is like 1980. I think my grandpa signed up for a AAA membership, and then obviously I'm grandfathered in 2 times over. So I feel like everybody just assumes if you need a tow, you book through AAA, right? And contrary to popular belief, only 15% of the country books tows through AAA or insurance. So the other 85% of the country, when they need a tow, they go to Google, they type in towing near me, and they just go down the list and they just start calling, right? So then we were like, okay, that's happening on the demand side. Then we started talking to the tow operators, right? And started looking at how they manage their business, because then we pivoted around 2020, 2021 entirely to marketplace for towing, lead generation for towing, right? Then because we just saw so much potential in this market, if you have a highly fragmented base of providers and you have such a one-off need on the demand side, right? Nobody needs a tow on a regular basis, right? So it's like you have that no brand recognition for a consumer, right? Yeah. And you have a tow company that doesn't necessarily know how to acquire customers all that well.
Unless you own like an Aston Martin or a Maserati, you don't need a tow regularly. If you do have one of those 2 brands, then maybe it's different. I'm a car guy. I've got to stick stuff like that.
There you go.
Anyway, keep going.
So basically, so then what happened is we started really talking to these tow operators, because we started onboarding them like crazy because we had so many requests for towing coming in. And that's when things got really interesting, man. We started looking at how they manage the back end of their business. And to say it's antiquated, to say it's backward, to say it's pen and paper is an understatement. Like we went on ride-alongs with these guys, and I kid you not, some of them are using like that, those mead composition notebooks that we would have to
I
buy. I buy
do.
them for
I
my
do.
kids. I buy them for my kids right now every fall for school supply shopping. But basically, they have one of those in their truck. Then they have a calculator, and I've seen some guys with the accounting calculator with the roll coming out of it, right? I mean, I just use a TI-82 plus. That's what I've always used, right? So you have those kind of like that process on the front driver's seat, right? The passenger seat. So every time that they get a request for a quote, they need basically three pieces of information to provide an accurate quote. They need the pickup address, the drop-off address, and then the car make and model. And the reason why they need that is because every time that they quote someone, it's kind of like the aviation industry where like a plane ticket, the price is predicated on the distance and mileage between pickup and drop off, right? Kind of the same concept, where every tow company has a flat hookup fee that they charge. Usually it's like $80, $90, $100, right? In that ballpark range. And then they charge per mile, like $3 a mile, $4 a mile, $5 a mile, right? So you kind of put yourself in the shoes of a tow operator. 90% of the entire industry is a one owner operator type business. Okay. So that means the business owner is the truck driver, is the person answering the phone, is the person that is quoting everybody, right? So the guy's wearing like 10 different hats. He's getting about 10 to 15 incoming calls per day of people looking for a quote for a tow 24/7. Towing is 24/7, right? Towing is not a 9 to 5 kind of job. So you look at those two things, and then every time they get an incoming call, they're likely doing a tow, they're on the road, they're out and about, right? They don't sit in a closed door office like I am right now, right? They're usually out there on the street doing tows or looking for tows. So they take these incoming phone calls and then they have to ask those questions. And there's a couple of challenges there. One, a lot of people don't enunciate very well when they're saying where they are or what their address is.
Yeah.
So that's a big challenge. The second challenge is a lot of these tow companies, they're outside when they're talking to people on the phone, right? Usually like hooking up a car, doing a tow, right? Where it's very loud in the background. So if someone is trying to dictate an address, they're out there on 294 driving, opening up Google Maps, trying to type in whatever the person is saying over the phone, right? You can see kind of this friction of everything that they're going through 10 to 15 times a day. Okay. So then what happens is they get that pickup and drop off address. They punch that into Google Apple Maps. It's 14.6 miles. They'll take their calculator on their passenger seat. They'll type in 14.6 times 5 plus 100. Okay, Mr. Customer, your price is 175 or whatever, right? And you kind of look at that, and they do that 10 to 15 times a day. And then you also couple that with the fact there's no CRM. They don't record these quotes. They have no idea who they quoted, right? At what price. And you jumble all of that together, and we were witnessing this entire process. And my co-founder and I look at ourselves and like, how has this space not seen innovation, right? In the way that other industries has. I mean, I think you and I were talking about this, that like, it's almost like there's no good ideas out there because everything's been beaten to death, right? And you kind of look at that and we can peel back the proverbial onion on why that is. And I have a thesis around why that is. And it has to do with how VCs monopolize what gets funded, right? So that's a conversation for later on. But basically, what it boils down to is this market size is 50,000 companies nationwide. Okay. Apparently, that's way too small in the grand scheme of things, right? So that's probably what has caused the lack of innovation in the space. And then we were looking at this as well. We care about solving problems for people. We don't care about, right, trying to go after the biggest market, because in this process, we were refining our target market, right, at every stage. Horizontal marketplace. We wanted to be the Amazon of services, okay? And then you had 10 pivots in between. And then we're now building B2B vertical SaaS for the towing industry, right? So you can kind of look at that trajectory of refining our ideal customer profile again and again and again, right? And it's really predicated on what problems can we find that are so specific, but at the same time, the market doesn't necessarily understand the problem, right, enough to look for a solution. So what happens is just a void, right? And we've uncovered that void, and that's really when we pivoted. I think there's this Batman quote, which is, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Okay. And in startup land, I feel like it's you either IPO a consumer hero, okay, or you pivot enough to B2B vertical SaaS. I feel like all these consumer startup founders that wanted to do something right, insanely idealistic, right, just ended up selling B2B vertical SaaS. But you know what? If that's where you can find pain points and you can build solutions for, and it generates LTV for your customers, and it basically allows your customers to thrive with the adoption of technology because they just can't do it themselves, right? That's what business is all about, right? Solving problems for people. So that's a long-winded answer of why tow grace.
Got it. So it's interesting as I heard you talk about the janitorial supply side reverse auctions to municipalities. I'm thinking this is a relatively young guy going after these completely unsexy businesses. When you evaluate a business opportunity, are you passionate about the business itself? What drives you? Is it just like, hey, a monetary decision, like, hey, here's a market opportunity, here's an opportunity to serve a client and provide a lifetime value? What's for somebody who may have not gone through as many pivots as you, who is kind of maybe confused or unsure of how to evaluate a business, or they might think, what, my passion is really doing XYZ, and that's what I'm going to stick to because Steve Jobs or whoever they listened to said, do something that you're passionate about, because the amount of pain, agony, and suffering that you're going to have to go through to make it a successful venture will require that level of interest and commitment. Whereas I feel like you may not be of the same ilk. You might say, yeah, a million rolls of toilet paper, I'll do it. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think like a common thread that I've seen myself kind of get involved in is basically the antiquated, unsexy industries, right? So I'm not the guy building an AI app, right? I'm not the guy building a crypto token. That stuff, I believe a lot of it is a fad, right? I don't know if there's a lot of value creation there, but more power to the guys that are building and actually solving real world problems. But for me personally, it's more so where you can recognize where there is a gap in regards to something that is being underserved or something that is not being served adequately, and there's an arbitrage involved in that process, right? So in the commodity space, like I came from a world of buying and selling pallets of product on top of them, right? And I did that for 8 to 10 years, and then I pivoted and I started a different business, and it was basically selling software, right? And what's magical to me, right, is kind of looking the juxtaposition between buying and selling pallets of product on top of it to a customer that needs it, and being creative and building something from scratch, because that's what we were doing, right? We're building from scratch. And I can basically build something, I can sell it to 10 people, and then I still have it, and now they have it. And I can rinse and repeat it over and over and over again, right? And that doesn't exist in the commodities world. That only exists in the software world, right? And I feel like that's the magic of software, right? Is when you find something where you can build it and it solves a tangible pain point. So in this example, right, what we did for the Tow Grace app is I kind of walked you through that really antiquated process of asking all those questions. The app, what tow companies do now is they open up the app, they click a button, whoever they're on the phone with gets a link where they can select their current location. They can type in their pickup, drop off, car make and model. And then what that does is that basically shows up in the tow operator's dashboard of our app with their pricing already calculated that they put in the settings, in-app GPS already there, in-app texting already there, in-app calling already there, right? A map so they can zoom in and out. I mean, we've eliminated maybe 6-7 steps in 2 clicks, right? And we've leveraged the consumer putting in the information, right, accurately, as opposed to the tow company requesting it. So you see how we've kind of optimized the process on both sides. We've saved time from the consumer, we've saved time for the provider, we've given them both a positive experience. And you look at kind of what we've done, and that's the wedge that we've used to drive retention. Because we have guys that, I mean, we have Slack channels that kind of get pinged every time they use our app. And it's like ding, 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 right? Like I'm seeing it, and it's crazy because I'm looking at myself, like every time this happens, we just save them like 15 minutes. Every time I see that Slack notification, right? And that's what's incredible about it, is because I see them using it this much. That's true product market fit, right? That's the definition. Because if we've had some of our customers say, dude, if you go down for a day, our business stops, right? It's that mission critical. Because our objective is we want their entire business to live within the Toe Grace app. We want to be that much of a value creation on the front end and the back end. And that only happens when you're this super specific on one customer profile, on one industry, and you're building tailored solutions for them. So to kind of sum up, the answer to your question, it's more so I get a rush, an adrenaline for solving problems for people in a creative way and building, right? It's not necessarily an affinity or a love or a passion to one specific industry, to one specific product, to one specific type of software. It's the human to human interaction, right? We're building and getting creative ways to solve problems is a rush for me, right? And I guess that's what's kind of led me to go through all of these pivots.
I looked at the app because you showed it to me, and it's very elegant. The UI is beautiful. It's so easy. I wish there's a way that we could show it, because I think if I was a tow truck driver, I'm all of 5 feet 4 inches tall. I'm not hooking up a car to a tow truck anytime soon. But it is incredibly intuitive, incredibly easy to use. I can imagine someone looking, a potential tow truck driver who logs on to the app, looking at how they were doing things before with the calculator, with the strip of paper that comes out of it, and calculating it while they're driving this big tow truck and talking on the phone and all the rest, and they look at this, and it's just like, it is like that eureka moment, like, why didn't I think of this kind of a situation? So to that end, let's shift our conversation a little bit about how you went to market. So I'm assuming you had piles of money to pour into your organization and just allow it to continue to grow, and you've got a indefinite amount of money that you can stick into the company to achieve profitability. Is that right?
Yeah, that'd be nice if that was the case, right? Who wouldn't want a scenario like that, right?
Yeah. What's the reality?
Yeah. So the reality. So to your first point, I cannot take credit for the UI. I have a rock star co-founder, Sajid.
Okay.
Basically, half of our conversations are, "Hey, I need you to build this because this is how I can sell it," and he's going, "I need you to sell what we've already built." And this back and forth again, it's a typical CEO CTO conversation, right? Dynamic where we're basically, we have to understand what we're actually trying to build, who we're trying to solve it for, right?
Yeah.
But the UI, I cannot take credit for that. That's all Sajid. He's very particular, and that's one of the things that him and I see eye to eye on, is we will not ship junk. We will not put out anything that we can't stand behind, right? And if that means it's going to take a little bit longer, the days of, so back in startup land, maybe 2010 to 2017, 2018, you could basically get by what's called an MVP, a minimal viable product. Okay.
Yep.
You could put any skeleton together, ship it, get customers to use it, get feedback, go through the whole feedback loop, right? These are the principles of growing a startup, right? And nowadays in 2023, people are so used to finished products. I don't think you can get away with basically shipping out a skeleton anymore, right? So when it comes to spending time basically focusing on the UI at the beginning, I think that's very important, because first impressions last. They really do, right? And if you're putting out a product where you're going to stand behind, then it doesn't have to have necessarily all the bells and whistles, but people have to feel inclined to use it, right? So that's kind of why we basically focused heavily on the UI to start. Your question was necessarily about kind of how we got going. So we've been very beneficial to have some really supportive investors. I was able to just network, and I knew a lot of folks here in the Chicagoland area and around the country that, it's more so they're taking a bet and they're basically investing in our ability to execute on a vision, iterate that vision, re-execute, iterate, re-execute, go through the feedback loop. It's not necessarily, because we started as a reverse auction marketplace, right? 80% of our investors, actually 85% of our investors invested in that concept, right?
Can I ask you how many, when you say 85% of your investors, how many investors are we talking?
We've got about 30 to 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask you how much money in total you've raised?
A little over $2 million.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How long was that span of time?
So we've taken a very unconventional fundraising path that's very atypical compared to your typical startup founder, because what we've done is we've raised capital piecemeal as we shipped and as we hit milestones. So the conventional process of growing a startup that's what they call venture backed, right, is you come up with an idea, you have some use case, you have maybe some beta customers, right? If you want to call it, that's like the pre-seed. So people might recognize these terms. Pre-seed is basically usually idea, solid team, maybe some validation from some beta customers or user engagement, right? Seed is basically where you have somewhat of a product, that MVP. People are using it, but you really don't know the trajectory of the company. You don't know really where you're going to land, right? And what you're going to settle on. And then Series A is when you've basically zoned in on one specific product offering, pricing plan, and it's usually you need funding to scale, right? So this is all early stage, right? So you got pre-seed, seed, Series A. So you want to call our reverse auction marketplace, that was basically the pre-seed and seed. So we rose capital as we were passing the idea phase and we got beta customers, right? Then we rose more capital as we started onboarding supply, right? Then we got more capital as we started onboarding a lot more demand and we showed the usage, right? Those like 10,000 requests that came in a very short period of time that, hey, this is market adoption here. People are using this. Demand side is using this, right? Then, so we kind of, as we went through this trajectory, we were not profitable. So cash flow could not finance the operations of the business. So that's where our investors came in. And, we've been very, very fortunate to have investors that are, it's not only like supportive of the iterations that we've gone through, but they truly invested because they see our willingness to run through brick walls, and we will figure it out. We will scale, right, in some way, shape, or form. Because a lot of the other side of it is folks just have some type of beta. They raise a seed round or a pre-seed round. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, they just shut it down, right? Because it's all investor money anyways. Yeah, so it's kind of.
I think that's so unethical, and I mean, whatever side you're on of that, I mean, I just think at the end of the day, any individual who's worth his salt, regardless of what is industry practice, regardless of what is accepted, I think as somebody who is embarking on starting something has to have that level of responsibility and commitment to their investors and to themselves to see something all the way through fruition. And we've been a little spoiled, or I think there's some misconceptions that folks have because they sometimes view the capital raise as the end all be all. And I think in our conversation we were like, no, that's, first of all, people who think like that shouldn't be raising capital. And number two, that is not the way to operate anything that's going to be successful.
Yeah. I've in the past 18 months, I've pissed a lot of VCs off. I've pissed a lot of founders off because I've been a little bit of an anarchist in that regard, where I feel like people buy into the glorification of the VC type of model where they are literally vision shaping and dictating the trajectory of the company when they think about the company maybe 10 minutes a week, because that's how their portfolio construction is set up, right?
Yeah.
So, that's one of those things where, I've talked to a lot of founders, and it's a lot. I feel like a lot of founders don't truly understand this power dynamic, and they don't understand what it means to raise capital from institutional investors. Because we have some in that $2.5 million, we have some institutional investors, right? So they came in with smaller check sizes. They wanted to put in more, but we said, look, we're raising on what's called a SAFE agreement, which is basically a convertible note for an equity financing event in the future, right? And that's different than a convertible note. There's a technical nuance there, but basically what it is we rose on SAFEs, but what happens with startup founders is they basically will pitch to a ton of VCs, okay? And what they do is they kind of equate VC funding with success, right? And I can empathize. I don't sympathize with it, but I can empathize with it, because what happens is, if, let's say, we took the trajectory of raising, because we got offers for it, let's say $3 to $5 million as a seed round. Okay, so standard dilution is 20%. So if you're raising, right, a $5 million seed round, your post money valuation is probably around the $20 to $25 million range, right? Which is very, right, which drives the founder's ego. Usually, if you just have a handful of customers, wow, I built something that's $5 million. No, you didn't, because value is based on what someone will pay for, not what someone will invest in, right? These are two different things, right? So it's kind of one of those things where you have this dynamic where a VC is pumping in X, but then they're acquiring control and voting rights and all of these governing covenants that will dictate a lot of the decision making of the company, but the founder has no clue what they're like really. And because things are so nascent at that stage, they don't know what success looks like. Therefore, it's like, hey, if it takes their money to get to where I want to be, then I'm okay with them coming along for the ride, right? But
even if they don't know what they're doing, even if the CEO has no clue, doesn't have a minimum viable product, or just essentially somehow sold a concept that people invested in, but in exchange for that higher risk, you're going to get a lot less control. At the end of the day, you're much more an employee.
Yeah, and so that's one side of it. And let's just say someone's okay with that. You know what? It was their capital that gave me the ability to do what I want to do. Okay, fine. If you want to rationalize it that way, I don't buy into that mindset, right? I believe you should take the bull by the horns and build a business, right, that cash flows in a very short period of time, right? But I can empathize with that mindset. What people don't understand is the fact that you have given and handed over every decision when it comes to what direction your company wants to go in. You are building a business based on the internal rate of return of the lead investor of that VC fund, what their objective is. And a lot of guys just don't take the time to understand and figure out what actually motivates, what incentivizes a VC. They are not in the business of investing in companies. They are in the business of exiting companies.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't really appreciate that statement, because if you look at it as, this person is not interested in investing, he's interested in exiting this company.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's how they get paid. Right. There's no glorification of just investing. Right. So what happens then is you got to look at, okay, how is their fund structure set up? What's the typical VC fund structure? Right. Well, the fund economics are, I'm going to raise $100 million fund. Okay. I'm going to invest in X number of companies, knowing 98% of them are going to go to zero. Okay. The 2% that do go through, right, are going to make up for the 98 losers and return a 3x, a 5x to myself and my investors. Right. That's how a VC fund operates according to those fund economics. So if you understand the implications of that, it's okay. If I'm a VC fund, I care about top line growth because I care about getting in as early as possible and having the valuation skyrocket in the shortest period of time, right? Because then the more times that happens, the more de-risker this company is in my portfolio, which is a high likelihood of that company taking over and making up for the 98 losers, right, that are also in my portfolio. So then you kind of look at that in the context of the founder. Now, Mr. Founder this is his first company. If he were to exit for 10 million bucks, that would be life changing for himself, for his family, for his kids, for his grandkids, right? I mean, you have one life. You literally have one life on this planet, right? And something like that would be life changing for generations. But to a VC fund, that's a failure.
Yeah.
A $20 million exit is an absolute failure because the size of their fund and the economics of their fund require that if a company is gaining traction and a company is getting acquisition offers from other private equity shops or companies in the industry, most VCs shut those down. They shut it down, and they have veto rights, and they can shut it down, even though that would yield generational wealth for the founder. But it doesn't align with the VC's interest, because if you're getting traction, hey, let's double down, let's invest a little bit more money or a lot more money, and let's take riskier bets, and let's grow top line revenue at the expense of profitability, right? And then what happens in a downturn like we're in right now, all these VCs back away, right? Yeah. And now you have all these companies that are not profitable that have to go through massive layoffs, and the business model sucks because they never took the time to fix the unit economics.
Yep.
And that's all because of this race to increasing the IRR for the VC fund, and the founders just gave away the keys in the process, right? So a lot of founders don't understand the dynamics of this, and it's one of those things where if you're going to play the game, you got to play to win. Yep. You have to play to win. So that means to play to win, you have to know where all the incentives are for everybody in the industry, and then you have to act and build accordingly.
I love how you were able to break that down. So what keeps you up at night right now? So you're in 38 cities, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
So you guys
we're in 35 cities.
35 cities. You guys have grown very rapidly over this, and you raised the money when?
We raised the money. I mean, we've been raising capital since 2019. Like I said, piecemeal, right?
Okay, right.
So thankfully we've hit profitability now. So it took a long time to get there, but it's one of those things where, I've made it a point to not necessarily raise, institutional capital that has those covenants, because again, what it does is it just boxes you in, right? And I'm one of those guys where, I'm very ungovernable, as they say. I can't be boxed in. I need the flexibility and the latitude to build and to go to market how I see it fit. So it's one of those things where we're growing at a pace. To answer your question, what keeps me up at night, I have to grow where cash flow finances growth. There's a lot of things that we want to do, right, in the near future, because what it is my thesis is looking at these super antiquated, unsexy industries that just haven't adopted technology, right? And we give them all the sales and the operational tools to run and grow their business more efficiently, right? That's step one. Step two is layering on a lot of different revenue levers. Okay, so we want to build out a full suite of merchant services. So every tow company can basically charge their customers through our app, right? Shopify is a fintech company, not a website development or hosting company, right? Not a lot of people know that, but they take a slice of every transaction on the Shopify platform, right? So that's what a fintech company does. So, we want to be able to offer fintech services within the app that takes engineers to build out, leveraging all of our tow customers. There's a lot of buying power that we have for insurance, right? Because every single tow truck pays $1,500, $2,000 a month for insurance. You multiply that by all the tow companies that are on our platform, we're sitting on an incredible amount of purchasing power that we can leverage to insurance companies to bring rates down, right? So then you become almost like an insurtech company, right? Then you offer payroll services within the app, right? These guys can actually pay themselves properly. They pay their employees through the app, right? It's a full suite, one-stop solution for everything in their business, right? That requires engineers to build out. There's a ton of data that we're collecting in the business. So everything from incident related data to pricing data by zip code. So then you become a data company and leveraging and harnessing that data and then repackaging it and selling that data, right, to folks. That requires engineers to build out. So it's kind of looking at our trajectory of basically, harnessing all these different types of companies within the TowGrace ecosystem, right? And then you become a one-stop full suite solution for the tow company, where basically you're monopolizing their spend, right? It's like all of their spend outside from them paying themselves, right? We want to run through tow grace in some way, shape, or form. So like a fuel card program, these guys fill up diesel every day, right? We want to be able to offer a credit card, a fuel card, right? Further on the fintech play, and all this basically drives up LTV. So it's the land and expand type of strategy. You land a customer, right? And then you basically see how deep can I get in? How many problems of yours can I solve? That's the way that we're approaching this. So what keeps me up at night is I feel like we're not able to grow as quickly as we can because we don't have the funding to build out these solutions. We've got the customers that need it and want it, right? We just have to grow a little bit more, get to more profitability so we can finance some of this growth.
Understood. No doubt, as you've expanded your client base, gone into multiple cities, you obviously had to hire on a lot more people at Tow Grace to manage sales, account management, clientele, etc. Are you guys centrally located where everyone reports to the office? Are your employees remote? How do you hire? What's your culture like? How many employees are you at right now? All kinds of questions related to that I think a lot of folks just sometimes kind of fly by the seat of their pants. Have you taken a more deliberate approach? I know you're a very deliberate, intentional guy in general. How have you approached hiring? What is that looking like right now?
Yeah, so in a typical, I mean, if you want to call it a marketplace and SaaS company, right? You let's talk about the positions. You have engineering and development, right? That's a whole department, right? So we basically have engineers, right, that are building product. We have a whole sales staff. So you have SDRs, BDRs, account executives, customer success, right? So SDRs bring people onto a trial for our program. AEs, account executives, convert those trials to paid subscription plans. And then customer success is there to make sure that folks are knowing how to use the app, they're handling any issues, they're onboarding, they're when we launch new features, somebody has to call our existing customer and say, hey, by the way, you can do this now, right? So there's different stages of the sales process. So we have a lot of folks in a lot of different areas that are specifically focusing on one area of the business. And then I basically oversee all of the sales, business development, operations. And then my co-founder Sajid oversees everything tech related. So we hire a lot of offshore folks. I feel like that's our secret sauce. Yeah, and we figured out unique ways to acquire talent, to train that talent, right? To integrate them into to talk and speak like as if they live here in the US, which is a lot more challenging when you're dealing with offshore folks. So we've done some creative things, which I'm not at liberty to go into too much publicly, but we've figured out unique ways to get them to sound very quote unquote American over the phone. If you want to call it that.
Very cool. Very cool.
And that's been our secret sauce.
Super exciting. Super exciting. Were there particular countries that you identified as places that were ripe for the ideal building of an offshore team? I'll tell you my experience really briefly. So we're about 50 or so people plus minus, and we went into Pakistan, we've got India, we've got Philippines. I'm not going to go into detail, but what's interesting is each of those geographic areas have their own unique culture, their own unique pros and cons. And what's been really important for me is creating a culture where it feels like you're sitting right next to your colleague, where it feels like everyone's sort of reporting into work, and we've got our meetings at the beginning of the week, the end of the week. Some of them are rah sessions. We're using Trello and Slack and multiple different tools to make sure that things get done efficiently despite time differences. And that was a big deal for us because we had an office here on Michigan Avenue where at the time we had a total of 12 people reporting into the office. So our sales guys were there, account managers were there, AE, all the different names, or we call them program managers. And that was when COVID hit and everybody was working from home. That was either, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if we would get an influx of clients or whether our whole business was in jeopardy. And so what we ended up learning was, gosh, we can actually have our sales team overseas. We can have our account managers, program managers overseas. And as long as we operate with a good workflow, a good process, figure it out, that can actually drive down costs, increase sales, increase profitability, increase efficiency, and you don't lose any part of the culture. I'm very much a face-to-face guy, and we learned that we didn't, we can replicate a lot of those cultural elements and have that camaraderie as we grew, so that it wasn't like, some of the challenges that I was worried about running into was I work with guys in Pakistan, in the Philippines, and other places, and even a freelance capacity. A lot of them, they don't give a shit about, your company or the work that they're doing for you. If it's not making them money and it's not, they don't treat it as a full-time job, where I'm, at that time living and dying on, their ability to do that work quickly. I know that's a mouthful, but what has been your experience in that regard?
Yeah. So we hire all over the world. I'm not specific. We're very agnostic when it comes to our hiring. It's not that, oh, we only need to be in this part of the world. I've experienced having a lot of different people work for us here with different backgrounds and cultures. One thing is that certain cultures, it's, and it's this is a tough conversation to have non-managers, non-founders, not, non-bosses quote, right? Because it comes off a little bit crass, I guess. But when it comes to the objective of a manager, a boss, a founder, anybody in any leadership position is to align the interests of the business, the company, the organization, right, with everybody involved. It's as simple as that, right? So when it comes to understanding what motivates people, certain people are motivated by the carrot. Certain people are motivated by the stick, right? So it's, hey, I want to do well because I want to chase a bonus. I want to chase a higher compensation package. I want to do well because I'm fearful of losing my job, right? These two, this dichotomy between the two has vast implications on how they operate and how they take criticism, right? And I think it's important to understand a lot of the cultures that folks hire from, because certain cultures are set up where they're not necessarily motivated by a higher compensation. If they lose this job, they actually lose the ability to feed themselves and their family. Yeah. And they will work tirelessly. They will work passionately because they're working to provide for their family. And I've experienced those guys, right? And they're rock stars, right? When it comes to responsiveness and quality, right? And they take criticism well because they genuinely want to do a good job, right? Because that's what motivates them, right? And then I've hired folks where it's just purely a money play, right? And some of those guys, it's you compensate them well enough and they just crush it for you, right? But then there's not a whole lot of loyalty there, because as soon as a better offer comes around, right, a lot of that goodwill goes down the drain. But then a lot of the time they come back when they realize the grass is not greener on the other side. So it's kind of this, this tug of war, I guess. And that's one of the challenges of, because when you're hiring offshore, a lot of risks come involved from a security standpoint, right? Somebody, like, you got to be very careful about the access that you're providing and what they can do with that information and blah blah blah. We're the beneficiaries of being essentially in a legal system where there are consequences for violating the law. There's not really many consequences if someone's offshore. Right. So that's where, there's all these dynamics that a founder, a manager, a boss has to understand and navigate accordingly.
How would you sum up your culture?
Accountability, right? I think that's number one, right? And ownership. It's one of those things where I can teach you something, but I can't baby you, right? And I expect you to understand it. I expect you to digest it. And I expect you to put in the time to make sure that you're actually generating the productivity that you committed to doing. Because again, with hiring a lot of offshore folks, it's all remote work anyways. And we're not micromanagers here. We don't micromanage by any means. We can't. We don't have the time to. I don't have the time to, right? So that's where we've been fortunate enough to set up very strong KPIs that we can track, where it's almost like a person's performance without talking to them, because a lot of this is KPI driven, metric driven, right? And that's why you need a rock solid tech stack. We built a lot of our KPI metrics that we're tracking in-house proprietary for our business, right? We don't rely upon Salesforce or HubSpot or some of these other project management tools or CRMs. That's one thing that we've optimized for, is because we're a technology company. So if we want to do something, it's not let's look for a solution. The conversation is, okay, let's build this ourselves and let's make it super focused and proprietary to what we're trying to accomplish, right? And we've had guys look at our tech stack and they're like, dude, you could repackage this and sell it to other companies very easily because it's so specific, right? But we build these things just to enhance our own productivity, right? And that's kind of the benefit of being a tech company, is you look at the world through a different lens.
Got it. No, that's super, super insightful. Does it take you longer when you do that?
Yeah. I mean, no doubt. But at the same time, that's a testament to, our actual engineering staff, right? And Sajid overseeing that. And then at the same time, it's about looking at the bigger picture where you're taking 2 steps back to take 10 steps forward, right? Because we're very particular and specific about the metrics that we're trying to track, because we understand the implications of that data. Because we understand and we have a pulse on every aspect of the organization, then we scale and we grow 10x faster.
Wow. Very insightful, very insightful. 2 last questions. Is there a book that you've read that's had an impact on your life that you would like to share with our listeners?
No, I mean, I'm a religious guy, so the Quran is really something that motivates me in a lot of different ways. I learn my stuff anecdotally, dude. It's all trial and error. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Where do you see your business 12 months out, maybe 24 months out?
Yeah, so we're very passionate about rolling out some of these fintech revenue levers. Very passionate about that, because that's not only from a revenue generation play, but again, our North Star metric is how can we monopolize the money flow of our customers through our app, right? Because the more that you're controlling the money flow for your customers, the more that they rely upon you. But at the same time, if you're providing a substantial amount of value in return, then it's a very harmonious relationship, right? So like I use this example all the time. Like, I don't know what we did before Slack. People were emailing back and forth. It's crazy, right? But Slack is just something that revolutionizes so many businesses. And, that's what we've started to become for a lot of tow companies. So we want to double down and really focus on building out the features that allow us to enhance that relationship, right? Take that relationship to the next level. And the fintech offering, whether it's payroll services, whether it's merchant services, there's obviously a product roadmap that we've itemized what is on the priority list. But that's something that we see in the near future. And again, the data aggregation play. We're sitting on, so we've had almost like 75,000 tows booked in our platform in the past years, maybe 15 months, right, across 35 cities. I mean, we are able to aggregate at a moment's notice the average hookup fee and mileage fee on a per zip code basis, right? And that's incredibly valuable data, because there's no other company that is able to capture that real-time data, because it's based at the individual provider level. It's not like there's one Jiffy Lube for towing that has 30% market share of all tow companies, right? So we're sitting on so much data that we can harness and basically repackage and monetize. So in the next 12 to 24 months is exciting to start really diving into some of these avenues and monetizing, what we actually have in our wheelhouse.
Amazing. That's so awesome. Very last question. So I'm a foodie. We had brunch the other day. It was an amazing place that you took me to where we met. What's the most underrated restaurant in Greater Chicago that you would recommend?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I got to do this by cuisine right now, man. Okay. Because I got to give you a couple different options.
Sure.
So I'm a fan of Daily Dabar on Devon. Okay. They got the best Bihari kebab roll you'll ever have.
All right.
So
down. I've never been.
Yeah. You got to check out that bodi roll. Get on a paratha, not on chapati. Okay.
Get on a paratha. Okay.
Yeah. And then I don't know, man, for Afghani food, I'm a fan of Kabul House. I feel like it's like in
Where are they?
Evanston.
Evanston,
Yeah,
Cobble
yeah.
House in Evanston, and Delhi Darbar on Devon. All right, so those are two
Yes.
spots we'll go check out. Anybody listening, if you're in Chicago, hit me up. I'll take you there. Hit up Irshaad. Maybe he'll take you there. I don't know, but he's a busy guy. All right. Well, listen, Irshaad, always a pleasure. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to break bread again soon. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Appreciate the time. Take care.